Courtroom in Lübeck, March 6, 1981. A murder trial is underway. The accused, Klaus Grabowski. He's seated before the court, and then a woman rises from the gallery. She pulls a handgun from her handbag and fires. 1 shot, 2, 3, 8 rounds total. 6 hit their target. The defendant slumps forward, dead. No one moves, no one screams. For a moment, the courtroom is frozen, and standing in the center of that silence is a mother, Marianne Bachmeier, a woman who has just executed the man accused of murdering her daughter, a little girl named Anna Bachmeier. And before you decide whether Marianne Bachmeier was a murderer or a grieving mother pushed beyond human limits, you need to know who Anna was and who Marianne was before that courtroom. Because this story did not begin with gunfire. It began with a little girl and a mother who loved her more than life itself. I'm your host, Justin Droke, and you're listening to Twisted Mysteries. Just a warning here, this case does involve crimes against a child, so as always, viewer and listener discretion is advised. With that, let's get into today's case. To understand Marianne Bachmeier, you first have to understand the world that shaped her. Marianne was born on June 3, 1950, in post-war West Germany. The country itself was rebuilding, families were fractured, trauma was inherited, and Marianne's childhood was not easy. Accounts describe a deeply unstable home. Strict, emotionally cold, chaotic. She reportedly felt unwanted early in life. As a teenager, she left home, not for adventure, but for survival. I found some information that she was actually kicked out of her home by her stepfather. She was living in an apartment that her mother was secretly paying for and continued to go to her local high school despite living on her own with only her rent being paid for. By 16, Marianne had become pregnant. Still a child herself and living on her own, that baby was placed for adoption. Then, it happened again. By the age of 18, she'd become pregnant with her high school boyfriend, a second pregnancy, a second child, and just barely an adult herself. With no stable income or support system, late in her pregnancy, some sources say that around about 8 months, Marianne was held at gunpoint and raped. Due to the trauma of that experience and with no coping mechanisms to help her overcome this experience, she placed her second child up for adoption. Her now ex-boyfriend's parents adopted the baby, but Marianne had no contact with her second child. Imagine that. Before adulthood, Marianne had already lived through family instability, separation, repeated loss, and overwhelming trauma. She learned early that life could take things from you. Then, in 1972, everything changed. She gave birth to a little girl she named Anna. And unlike before, this time, she kept her. The child would not leave her arms. This child would stay. And Marianne poured everything she had, all of her love, all of her regret, and all of her hope into Anna. Anna Bachmeier was born into an imperfect life, but by nearly every account, she was adored. She had blonde hair, bright eyes, a contagious smile. At 7 years old, She was at that magical age where children are old enough to feel independent, but still innocent enough to trust the world. She loved animals. She loved school friends. She loved talking to adults. She was fearless, curious, the kind of child who wandered toward life, not away from it. And Marianne loved that about her, but it also worried her because children like Anna, they trust too easily. And some predators see that. Still, to Marianne, Anna was everything. Friends said that Marianne didn't just love Anna, she revolved around her. Their relationship was intense, almost inseparable. They were not wealthy. Marianne worked nights. She worked at a bar that sat just below her apartment. Sometimes Anna would sleep nearby while Marianne worked. Often, Anna would get herself to and from school while her mother slept during the day. People judged her for that, called it irresponsible, but others saw something else, a single mother, young, doing everything she could to survive, to provide, and to stay together. It wasn't perfect, but it was love. Messy, human, real. They lived in Lübeck, a historic northern German city. Cobblestone streets, church towers, quiet neighborhoods. The kind of place where children still walked to school, where neighbors knew each other, where danger felt far away. And that illusion matters in the story because danger rarely looks dangerous. Sometimes it looks like a neighbor, a man with cats, a familiar face, someone children know and trust. May 5th, 1980. It began like any ordinary Monday. A mother and daughter had a small argument, nothing dramatic. Some accounts say it was over school, others say it was just a routine tension in the home. But to Anna, it did matter. She left that morning for school upset. And 7-year-olds do that. They storm out with the full confidence of someone who has never met evil before. Marianne likely believed they would talk later after her daughter returned from school, at dinner, at bedtime, tomorrow maybe. But Anna never made it to school. Out of defiance, she skipped school and wandered around the neighborhood instead. Marianne had no idea that her daughter was missing and had no idea that their argument was the last words she would ever speak to Anna. That's the cruelty of grief. You never know which goodbye is the last one. Anna never returned home, and somewhere nearby, a man was watching. Klaus Grabowski, 35 years old, a local butcher in town, quiet and unremarkable, but known to authorities. He had prior convictions involving children, young girls, serious offenses. During his prison sentence, he was given a choice. Spend what could possibly be the rest of your life in rehabilitation center for sexual deviance or undergo chemical castration. He chose chemical castration, and after 2 years of prison, he was free, living among families, among children. And just a side note, chemical castration is very different from the physical castration. In chemical castration, the individual undergoes hormone therapy, but not long after his release, he went to a doctor to have the chemical castration reversed. The doctor that performed the reversal had no knowledge of his criminal record, and there was no one checking in on Grabowski. That fact alone would later ignite national outrage, because many people believed Anna should have never crossed paths with him. But she did, because she trusted him. Some reports say he lured her in to his apartment with kittens. If true, that detail is unbearable. A little girl who loved animals walking willingly toward the man who would later kill her. Inside of Grabowski's apartment, Anna was sexually assaulted, then strangled, not because of rage and not because of accident, because he feared she would tell. That is what he later admitted. Afterward, he hid her body, placed her inside of a box, disposed of her near a canal. He attempted to erase her, as though a 7-year-old could just simply disappear. But evil often underestimates truth. His fiancée learned what had happened. He had confided in her about the crime. She immediately notified the police. Anna might never have been recovered and could have remained missing much longer if it wasn't for that phone call. Instead, Marianne received the worst news a parent can hear. Your daughter is dead. And then the second blow, how she died. That detail shattered her. I do feel that it is important to mention here a piece of Grabowski's defense that I found particularly disturbing. Grabowski claimed that 7-year-old Anna seduced him, and that when he resisted her seduction, Anna told him that she would tell her mom that he touched her inappropriately if he didn't give her money. Essentially, she blackmailed him into having sex with her. As a mother, this detail enraged me. I can only imagine what this had done to Marianne, both mentally and emotionally, after hearing this, having to sit through a trial, listening to that. There is grief, and then there is this kind of grief, the kind that rewrites your entire nervous system. People around Marianne noticed the change immediately. She became singular, obsessed, haunted. She replayed Anna's final day endlessly. What if she hadn't argued with her? What if she had walked her to school that day? What if? Every grieving parent knows that spiral, but Marianne's spiral had a face, a name, a man sitting in jail waiting for trial. And she decided she would look him right in the eye. So when the trial began in March of 1981, Marianne took her seat in the courtroom, just feet away from the man who had stolen Anna, listening to every detail, every horror, every final moment of her young child's life. And somewhere inside of her, something was breaking. And soon, the entire world would hear it. In the sound of 8 gunshots. After Marianne Bachmeier shot Klaus Grabowski in the courtroom on March 6, 1981, she did not try to flee. Witnesses said she immediately surrendered to authorities. She reportedly remained calm. Some accounts say she stated words to the effect of, "I wanted to kill him." There was no confusion about what had happened. This was not treated as an accident or an emotional outburst in the moment. It was investigated as a homicide. Initially, Marianne was charged with murder under German law. Prosecutors argued she brought a loaded weapon into court. She had hidden it in advance, and she waited for the right moment and deliberately fired multiple rounds. That suggested premeditation. Her defense argued something very different, that Marianne was psychologically shattered, that listening to testimony about Anna's rape and murder had triggered an overwhelming emotional collapse. Her attorneys leaned heavily on trauma, grief, diminished responsibility. Her trial began in 1982 in West Germany. It became one of the most watched court cases in the country. Public opinion overwhelmingly favored Marianne. Many Germans saw her not as a criminal, but as a mother who had done what they themselves might have done. The courtroom reportedly received flowers, letters of support, and enormous media attention. The debate became national. Was this cold-blooded murder or justice? On March 2nd, 1983, Marianne was convicted of manslaughter, not murder, and also illegal possession of a firearm. The court accepted that while the shooting was intentional, her emotional state significantly affected her responsibility. She was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but she did not serve all 6. She only served approximately 3 years and was released early on probation in 1985 for good behavior and rehabilitation considerations. Did she regret it? No. In later interviews, Marianne openly admitted the shooting was deliberate, and she repeatedly said she did not regret killing Klaus Grabowski. She believed she had delivered justice for her daughter, Anna. But she also acknowledged that it did not ease her grief. It didn't bring her daughter back. That pain stayed forever. After release, she remarried. She was never able to have more children after she remarried. At the time Anna was born, she had volunteered to have her tubes tied so that she was not able to have any more pregnancies. She spent time living in places including Lagos and Palermo and largely lived out of the spotlight. She died in 1996 from pancreatic cancer at the age of 46 and was buried beside Anna in Lübeck. For many people, Marianne served her prison sentence, but emotionally, she was serving a life sentence the moment Anna died. That is the story of Marianne and Anna Bachmeier. Thank you to everyone for supporting the podcast. For episode photos and video links, please check out my Instagram at twisted.mysteries. Please hit the like, follow, and share button. And if you are on Apple Podcasts, please leave me a review. It really helps me out. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find me there at Twisted Mysteries 26. I would also like to mention that in some of my episodes, pseudonyms may be used to protect people involved, and some of the events may also be embellished or dramatized for entertainment purposes. Case sources for this episode include murderpedia.org, wikipedia.org, historyback.com, grunge.com, thescreenlight.com, allchronology.com, utterlyinteresting.com, x.com, historianet.nl, siri.net, inonline.de. Until next time, stay twisted.